Good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting of the North Planning Committee. I'm Councillor Edgeley, the Committee Chairman. I'm going to do the usual administration before I talk through the running order of tonight's meeting. Can I have apologies for absence first, please?
We've received apologies from Councillor Duduku, and Councillor Stead is here a substitute.
Chairman, we'll put our apologies in for Councillor Dillon. He may well turn up late.
Okay, thank you. Any declarations of interest in the matters coming before tonight's meeting? Good. There are no minutes in the bundle. There are no matters been identified in advance or as urgent. Items 3 to 11 are in part 1, and then I have 3 enforcement reports in part 2. The part 2 of the meeting is in private and is not open to the public. We have 5 petition items tonight. For petition items, petitioners get 5 minutes to address us. You get 4 minutes on a green light, 1 amber, and you get to red, I will stop. I normally run strict timings, and I definitely will be tonight, because with that number of petitions, we do need to keep to time. For each petition item, regardless of whether petitioners turn up or not, the applicant or their agent has a right to address us, as do ward councillors on any matter, and Councillor Lewis has indicated that he wishes to speak on item 6. I haven't seen any other ward councillors yet, but who knows. I was just looking at a door there for a second, he was coming in. We are not expecting any fire drills tonight, so if the fire alarm goes, we're assuming it's real. There's an exit behind us there, and an exit over there, and well, odds are we're going down the main staircase. Can I please ask that all mobile phones are please switched off, or at least silent, and not disturb the meeting. Given that there are a number of petitioners, I suspect you'll only want to stay with the item you're interested in. Could I please ask that when you've done so, you leave quietly and don't congregate immediately beyond the door, because otherwise we can't proceed with the rest of our evening, and it is a fairly long evening for those who are unfortunate and have the later items. So if I could just ask for that. The voting members of committee tonight are Councillor Stead, Councillor Graham, Councillor Flynn, Councillor Higgins, Councillor Morgan, Councillor Oswald and Councillor Catcher. Should they not manage to come to an agreed conclusion, although they should with an uneven number, I should be absolutely safe tonight, I get a casting vote. Other than that, I do not vote. Now, the officer team will move around a little bit tonight. Manmahan Ranger is doing highways all night long. Mandeep Mahatra, James McLennan-Smith and Zanab at the back will be presenting various of the items as we go through. James Roger, the Head of Planning, will offer me advice as required. Liz Penny from Democratic Services, my clerk. Nicole Cameron, our legal advisor. I would say to members of the committee who are still wearing jackets, if they decide that they don't wish to, please don't feel you have to. This room may well get quite warm as the evening progresses, given that we are fairly full in here tonight. Okay, without any further ado, I'm going to move to item 5, which is 19 Glenalia Road, Ruislip on page 1. Andy, is this your one?
Yes, thank you, Chair. The first application on the agenda item 5, is 19 Glenala Road. The application seeks full planning permission for the erection of a single-storey rear extension, the enlargement of the roof to create additional habitable roof space, and then the subdivision of this property into 2 units, 1 2-bedroom flat and 1 3-bedroom flat. There will also be associated parking, amenity space, and the installation of a vehicular crossover to the front. I'll just run through the plans before we go through the scheme itself. So the application site is on the eastern side of Glenala Road. You can see from this block plan that there is a hatched area here, and that is an existing single-storey rear extension which is proposed to be demolished and rebuilt. There is also a single-storey detached garage, I'm sorry for those who have to turn around, on the site at the moment. We'll see it in the photographs, but that's also proposed to be removed. This is the existing ground and the first floor plan, so it is a chalet bungalow with 2 bedrooms at first floor level. And I think the elevations will show more clearly that there are 2 side dormers as existing. They're fairly modest in size, and if you look at the front elevation and the rear, it will be useful when comparing it to the proposed. Under the proposal, we would see a property at ground floor level. It would be provided with direct access to amenity space off of its kitchen dining room. The second property would be accessed via the side entrance and lead straight up the stairs into a first floor apartment. The amenity space for that flat would be to the rear of the site. There is cycle parking space for flat 1, which is the ground floor property, just to the side of here. There would be 2 parking spaces per the proposals and a bin and cycle store here. The elevational drawings are quite clear in showing where the changes are required in order to accommodate the space. So I'm not sure if you'll recall, but there was a hip roof previously, it's on this side, the front elevation, which is now changed to a gable end, and 4 quite significant flat roof dormers, whereas the other ones were pitched. Smaller dormers have been created in order to facilitate the first floor property. The ground floor rear extension is proposed to be rebuilt here, but again, it does exist at the moment. I'll show you from the photographs. You'll also see that because of the change in the roof form here and here, it creates it's not easy to see on elevational form, but it is on the from the flank elevation. It's able to see that there's a greater dominance of the roof as a result of that change. This just shows the vehicular crossover here. If we go through the plans, this is the front elevation of the property as it exists. The neighbouring property, you can see, has a small side dormer. This is the existing single-storey rear extension, which will be demolished and replaced, whereas this is the garage that's proposed to be removed in its entirety. This is the rear of the existing single-storey extension, which will be removed, and that is the existing first floor. Carry on through the picture. So this is the existing garden, which would then be subdivided, and this outbuilding would be removed, and that's an image of the rear elevation. There are some images now that show the relationship between the adjoining properties. So that's number 21, Glenala. It has had a single-storey rear extension, and this is the space between 17 Glenala Road, so that's number 17, and the application site. Again, this just shows some of the habitable windows on the flank elevation of number 17. And there's a similar relationship with an outbuilding in the garden at number 17, adjoining the building that's proposed to be demolished. This is the front elevation between the application site, which is here, and the adjoining site at Glenala Road. There is very little separation between these 2 properties. Apologies. The application before you is recommended for refusal. Whilst the site lies within the developed area and the principle of residential redevelopment is acceptable, the locality is characterised by single-storey detached and single-family occupied dwellings. The extension significantly increased the intensity of development on this small site. Its close proximity to the boundaries, in particular number 21, which is on the screen at the moment, would make it appear particularly cramped, and the significant gap would make the site and number 21 appear to be a single building when seen from the street. There's also limited opportunity for landscaping to the front of the site to soften and reduce the impact, namely because they're using the majority of the space for the 2 parking spaces. It's considered that the proposal would be materially harmful to the character of the local area, resulting in an incongruous form of development. It would harm the amenities of the occupiers of the adjoining dwellings by reason of overlooking and loss of privacy. So we've seen some of those issues from the photographs that we've seen of the site. It's also considered that the proposal would not provide sufficient or functional car parking and put additional pressure on street parking. That's principally because one of the flats is a 3-bed and would require 1.5 parking spaces under our standards. The other is a 2-bed and would require invariably sometimes 1. So we're only provided with 2 resulting in a potential increase in on-street parking demand. The application is recommended for refusal for 3 reasons, which are set out on page 2 of the committee report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Petition on this one, Mr. Higgins. If you come up to the table, is there no microphone? Yeah. If you just press that grey button on the middle of the microphone when you're ready, it'll light up, and then we'll do the timers. That's it.
Committee members and fellow neighbours. Glenalla Road is a cul-de-sac of mainly detached bungalows and characteristic of the suburban landscape that we all value so much. We believe that approval of this application would have a detrimental impact on this landscape. Furthermore, it would set a precedent, one which could potentially result in Glenalla Road's transformation into one of flats with multiple occupancy. Several of the properties in our road have been extended into their roof space, but they are in keeping with the inviting and attractive appearance of Glenalla Road. In this application, flat 1 has 3 bedrooms and a study, potentially a 4th bedroom, and flat 2 has 2 bedrooms. It is possible that 10 people and 10 vehicles could be associated with these flats. Yet there is only parking provision for 2 vehicles. Where would the additional vehicles park? Currently, the occupants of number 19 have 3 cars and a motorcycle. One of the cars is generally parked on the road. Parking is already a major issue in Glenalla Road. Frequently, refuse or delivery vehicles are unable to gain access due to parked cars and vans. There is a real fear amongst the residents that emergency services would be unable, on occasions, to have unobstructed access to the road. Your approval of this application would add to our existing concerns. Additional vehicles would present an increased risk to the safety of residents and other persons using the road. Parking issues were discussed with Councillor Burrows at a meeting in April of 2016. The dormers in the plans for this property would have an extremely detrimental impact on the environment of the 2 adjoining properties, numbers 17 and 21, due to lack of light and privacy. As well as being unneighbourly, this application demonstrates an absolutely scant regard for and a total lack of appreciation for what Glenalla Road means to us residents and is completely out of keeping with our road. We, the signatories on the petition, value and appreciate our road and have no desire to see it vandalised by work such as those proposed in this application. We ask that this application be refused. Thank you.
Thank you. Just hang on there in case members have got any questions. Any questions from members? No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
If you just turn that microphone off.
Sure.
Thank you. Is there anyone here on behalf of the agent or the applicant for this one? I'm taking no hands, that's good. There's no ward councillors present, in which case I shall move to the debate. Councillor Higgins.
We go with officer's recommendation. I think it's a hideous idea.
Councillor Oswald.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. It's all in the summary, isn't it? I'll second the refusal.
Okay. I have a proposal before me that supports the officer's recommendation. This application should be refused. 3 reasons shown. All those in favour of refusal, please clearly show. Thank you. That's unanimously refused. Thank you. I now move to items 6, 38 and 40 Duxhill Road, Northwood. James, this you.
Thank you, Chair. Evening all. What I'm going to do with this application, because I should try to give people a chance to leave. Is that okay? As there's a fair number of slides, I'm going to go through the summary and an overview of the application, and then I'll take you through the slides and explain them as I go through. To summarise, this application involves the demolition of two large detached dwellings on Ducks Hill Road and the replacement with a block of flats which consists of 9 three-bedroom units. These will be distributed over 3 floors with basement parking for 20 cars provided via ramped access from Ducks Hill Road. This is a resubmitted application following refusal of a previous scheme. A number of grounds were attached to that refusal, primarily regarding amenities of neighbours. There was also reference to flood risk concern and so on. So what's happened here is the applicant has come back again. They've made amendments to the scheme, primarily in the nature of stepping back the rear projection of the building, removal of balconies on the rear flats, obscure glazing to be provided on some of the windows to the side and the rear, and a remodelling of the roof slope on the northwest elevation, which is the elevation that flanks number 36 Ducks Hill Road. It's recommended that this application is refused. I apologise. I will run through the reasons for this. Ducks Hill Road is a road that originally comprised of large attached dwellings which over time have been subject to some redevelopment, including replacement with flatted development. This is something that has raised concerns with the council, and there is guidance contained within our residential developments SPD, paragraph 3.3, which stipulates that any development which would lead to more than 10% of the original residential plots on a 1 kilometre section of street being converted to flatted development should be resisted. This proposal, as I will show you shortly, would breach that threshold, and we are therefore recommending refusal on that basis and the impact that it would therefore have on the character of the road itself. There's also concerns regarding the depth of the rear projection of the building, particularly in relation to the property on number 36 Ducks Hill Road. It's a substantial projection to the rear at substantial height, and we feel that this would result in it appearing oppressive and overbearing, particularly towards the occupants of number 36 Ducks Hill Road. What I'll do now is take you through the slides. I'm just going to move to the side a bit so you don't have to look at my head. This is the location plan showing the site. I'll draw your attention to the addendum sheets. This location plan here shows all of the land under the ownership of the applicant. The actual development site is smaller than this, and this is shown on subsequent plans that we will go through.
Right.
Oh, that's right. Okay, sorry about that. Not used this before. This is a standard constraints plan just showing some of the planning considerations for the surrounding area. Again, this is the location plan submitted with the application, which does show a larger red edge area. These are the existing elevations of the dwelling currently occupying the plot at number 38 Ducks Hill Road. And these are the existing elevations for the property occupying number 40. Here we have a plan just showing the context of the surrounding area. So this includes properties on Signet Close as well as on Ducks Hill Road. Here we have the basement parking arrangement. It's not entirely clear on this resolution, but there are 20 parking spaces provided, and you'll see there it's the ramped access that will provide access to the basement parking. There are no other spaces provided, they're all contained within the basement. Here we have the ground floor plan. You can see in the red dotted lines, that's the footprint of the existing dwellings, and here we can see the rear projection, which some the concerners arose about, just to give you an appreciation of how far it projects to the rear of the site. These are first floor plans, again, which just show the arrangements of the flats. We have one flat there, and this is and the flat towards the rear, and this is the same arrangement for all floors. And this is the second floor plan, which again shows the same arrangement of the flats, 3 flats, 1, 2 and 3. This is the roof plan, just showing the roof arrangement of the proposed development. Here we have the north-east elevation, which is the frontage of the property. The basement parking you can't see as it's dug into the ground. There is a plan later on which shows the gated access that was proposed for the site. This is the northwest elevation, which will extend along the boundary which is shared with number 36. And this is the southeast elevation, which is the opposite side of the building. Here we have the rear elevation. You can see that the outlines of the existing houses have been added to this, and the dotted lines shown there at the side are to do with daylight assessment study, which was included with the application, and there's a fuller plan showing this, which I'll get to. This is just a proposed street scene drawing, just to show how it will sit in context with the surrounding development. And here we have the gated access that would be used with the basement parking, again, down a ramp, so you cannot totally appreciate from there. This is just a design of a summer house that would be located in the corner of the site to provide additional immediate space for occupants. Here we have the landscape plan which has been submitted for the development. You can see here, this shows a ground floor plan as well. These features here are terraces, which would be for private amenity space, and then the wider area would be used for communal space. And this is just context showing the site levels on the landscaping. Now, this is a study that I produced to give an idea of the amount of flatted development that is currently in place on Ducks Hill Road. The green sites are residential plots that have been redeveloped as flats. The brown sites are currently single residential dwellings. The grey sites are properties that are now associated with a separate road and so have not been included in the study. So what we've done here is produce this just to give an idea of the amount of flatted development that is present currently on the road. The application site is here, outlined in red. This is a plan that was submitted in relation to visibility displays for the site access. And then this just shows the daylight study that I alluded to earlier. What they've done here is shown the relation between the windows of habitable rooms at 36 Ducks Hill Road and operated on the basis of a 25% vertical visibility display. This is just the applicant demonstrating that they feel that daylight issues have been addressed. That's an aerial view of the site. This is the current street scene on Ducks Hill Road. You can see the staggered arrangement of number 38 and number 40. That's 38 there, and that is 40 there. Number 42 is just to the side there. This is a view on the site now between the two properties. You can see properties on Signet Close to the rear of the site. And here is a view showing the front of number 40 Ducks Hill Road, and you can just see number 42 there. This is again showing the rear of number 40, and this is the flank elevation of number 42 Ducks Hill Road. This is a view towards the rear of the site, properties on Signet Close here. This is a screen that has been fairly recently planted of Leylandi. And here we can see the relationship currently in place between number 38 Ducks Hill Road, which is here, and this is number 36 Ducks Hill Road. This gives a wider view of the northern boundary of the site. Again, you can see relation between the property number 36 and also properties on Signet Close. And here again, further back towards on the northern boundary, views of the rear properties on Signet Close. Thank you.
Okay, petition on this one, Mr. Pigeon. You just press the button on the microphone when you're ready, and then that will liven it up.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the panel. My name is Roger Pidgeon, and I am a Chartered Town Planner. I'm a partner in the firm of Lamont Planning Associates, and in my long career, I've also been the planner for the 8 London New Towns, for the Commission for New Towns. I've been a Deputy Director of English Partnerships, the then Government's Regeneration Agency, and I have been an Interim Chief Planning Officer for London Borough. Tonight I represent a number of local residents living in the vicinity. I have several points to make to the panel. I shall also come to a conclusion at the end. In paragraph 7.01 of your officer's report, it is stated that the proposal would, and I quote, involve the redevelopment of land which has been previously developed. I disagree with this sentence. The National Planning Policy Framework, or the framework for short, defines in Annex 2 of that document what comprises previously developed land. It specifically excludes, and I quote again, land in built-up areas such as private residential gardens. So the development is, I submit, on greenfield land, except for the footprints of the 2 houses, number 38 and number 40. There are other exclusions stated, but we don't need to worry about them. Moving on within the framework, paragraph 53 advises that local planning authorities should consider the case for setting out policies to resist inappropriate development of residential gardens, for example, where development would cause harm to the local area. And further in the framework, again at paragraph 216, you will find that the advice from the day of publication, decision makers may also give weight to relevant policies in emerging plans according to 3 criteria. That's the stage of preparation of the emerging plan. The more advanced the preparation, the greater weight that you as decision makers may give to it, the extent to which there are unresolved objections, and the degree of consistency of the relevant policies in the emerging plan to the policies in the framework. The Hillingdon Local Plan Part 2 Development Management Policies document goes to its examination in public in this coming month of June. The document is well advanced. The scale of objections to policy DMH6 is small, and policy DMH6 is consistent with the framework paragraph 53 to which I've just referred, namely resist inappropriate development in residential gardens. I strongly suggest, Chair, that policy DMH6 should be accorded considerable weight by yourself and the panel members when putting into the planning balance the assessment of this application. And in conclusion, I urge the panel to add a 3rd reason for refusal, namely, the development of this predominantly greenfield site is unacceptable in principle, being contrary to the London Plan Policy 7.4, which has regard to the National Planning Policy Framework, paragraph 53. Further, it is also contrary to Emerging Development Management Policy DMH6, to which the local planning authority attaches considerable weight, given it is about to become subject to an examination in public. And I make one last point, Chairman. How much weight the panel gives to a policy is a matter for the panel. This has been clearly determined by the courts. If it's material, and clearly I don't think there's any argument these policies are material to the determination of the application, it is for the members of the panel to determine how much weight they give to these policies and come into their decision and whether they add my suggested 3rd reason for refusal. Thank you.
Members have any questions? No, thank you very much. You just turn that microphone off for us as you leave. Thank you. Anyone here on behalf of the agent or the applicant for this one? Thank you. So, yeah, if you press it and it'll light up. That's it. Could you just state your name for the record because we don't have it?
Sveta Ostrovska. I can give you the spelling later. Okay. Sveta Ostrovska for the applicant. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members. We began our pre-application process with Hillingdon Planning Office in April 2016. In June 2016, we submitted a 10% assessment and met with the case officer at the time, who agreed with our findings and accepted them. We received communication from the pre-application officer saying that he was in full support of our planning application, and we had for weeks worked with him before submitting. The full application, the first full application, then sat with the planning office for another 20 weeks before finally being decided after immense pressure put on by us to come up with a decision. Prior to our second application, we met with Neil McClellan, who is the head of major applications with Hillingdon. He sat with us for 2 hours and we made significant changes to the scheme and followed his recommendations, so much so that on the 20th of February, he sent us back an email saying he supports the scheme and would go ahead with putting it forward to the planning committee. We had addressed at that time the issue at the boundary at number 36. We had brought in the boundary towards our build line by another further 1 metre, and these were all at his request. Finally, 1 week before the decision date, on the 8th of May, I received a phone call saying that 10% was an issue. So I asked him, since our first application in April 2016 till the 8th of May, what has changed? And to that, we had a meeting, and the case officer now, James, was there, and we asked him the same question, what has changed? And he said, nothing. Nothing has changed. He further added that the only reason for refusal would be based on this 10% issue. Now, back to the 10% issue, the policy is vague, and that has been stated time and time again by both the case officer here and by Neil McClellan as well. And furthermore, he stated that the 10% rules that they have applied are actually very different in terms of assessment. The boundaries they use, the roads they use, the roads which don't use. We followed the 10% assessment based on what the pre-application case officer had given us as written guidance. So, what I am just suggesting now, or what I'm telling you now, is a side of the story that the planning office at Hillingdon has basically led us up the garden path. In April 2016, had we been told that this would not go through because of the 10%, we would not have submitted a planning application based on 9 apartments. We are 1 year down the line. We have really spent considerable amounts of money at the behest of the council, producing report upon report, engaging with consultants, each report costing thousands of pounds. And we're at a stage now where the planning office has no answer to the questions we are posing them. We worked with the council. National policy and local policy states, please work with applicants early to determine the case. We did that. At every single stage, we worked with the council. We met with them. Even in the first application, we asked them, please tell us what is going on. Tell us, what can we change? The first case officer, not the pre-application, but the first main case officer, did not, despite 40 emails, 50 phone calls at least which were logged, and I have a full log of every single piece of communication, did not want to meet us. She refused to meet us, so much so that at the end of the process, before we received our first refusal, she said, I do not want to work on this case any longer. So I'm asking you, what exactly is going on at the Hillingdon Planning Office? Because we feel that we've been really unfairly treated. And we feel as though we've tried to work at every single stage of the way with the council, but we don't understand where we went wrong. 1 week before the decision date, we're given another refusal based on a reason which had been accepted by 2 case officers and the head of major applications when we met him. So what has changed? And all I can tell you is nothing, because that's exactly what they told us. Thank you.
Do members have any questions? Yes, you turn the microphone off. Members have any questions? I'll pick up the specifics of that in a moment. I'll ask the head of planning for a comment, but I'm going to hear the rest of this first. Nope, I think that's good. Councillors? No, don't worry about it.
Thank you, Chairman. I have written out quite a lot to say, but truthfully, having listened to James going through, I mean, he's come up with most of the salient points that I would be saying. So my concerns are the density. I mean, basically we have 9 flats with 3 bedrooms within each of them. That could lead up to 54 people living on a site, which seems like a massive increase in density. I have major concerns about visitor parking. There is no provision for visitor parking. The loss of light to the neighbouring properties, the loss of privacy to the neighbouring properties, and the drastic alteration to the street scene and the character of the area. I'm not sure whether you're aware of the cricket club, which is almost adjacent, and Denville Hall, which is a retirement home for aged actors, which is beautifully landscaped, and this will be a blot on the landscape as far as I can see. So for all those concerns, the one last one I would have is about the underground parking. It seems to go a heck of a long way underneath the rear of the building or the garden, and I am worried about flooding with that. So I could go on about damage to TPOs, but I won't. I hope that covers the ground.
Members have any questions? No, thank you. That concludes presentations. I'm going to ask. I'm going to clear one matter before we start. I'm going to ask the head of planning for a comment on this application and the advice that was given as a place to start.
Well, there was actually written pre-application advice given on the 6th of June 2016, and on principle of development, I'm just going to read out the paragraph. The conversion of single dwellings into more dwellings can enable more effective use of sites to be achieved. However, this type of development must seek to enhance the local character of the area. The Hillingdon Design Accessibility Statement residential layout states that the redevelopment of more than 10% of properties on a residential street is unlikely to be acceptable, including the number of houses which are redeveloped for new blocks of flats. On residential streets longer than 1 kilometre, the proposed redevelopment site should be taken as the midpoint of a 1 kilometre length of road to be assessed. Any application that comes forward must demonstrate compliance with this policy, or the principle of flatter development would be unacceptable. So this is the actual written advice that's been given on this site. I can't comment on 40 phone calls, but I can say that it was spelt out that the 10% rule would be applied. There's actually a whole page of that advice that talks about amenity impacts, and although it wasn't touched on by the petitioners, members should note that there's an overwhelming impact this development proposal would have on number 36 Ducks Hill Road because of the scale of development running along that particular boundary. I know it's staggered, but it's all very well the developer saying that daylight and sunlight assessment is met, but the impact on outlook will be absolutely overwhelming in terms of the bulk and mass as viewed from that particular property. So there are, in my mind, 2 robust refusal reasons, and as a committee, what you need to do is determine the application before you, and if there's a separate complaint issue regarding that the handling, the normal protocol is I have to, or another chief officer deal with that outside of the committee meeting. As regards what the first speaker said, if I may slightly paraphrase, and apologies if I'm paraphrasing, what the Mr. Pigeon was saying is that there's more that could be done to beef up the in principle objection to the proposal. Where I slightly differ is whether that needs a third refusal reason. I think if delegated authority was given to officers, we could beef up refusal reason 1, which effectively deals with the in principle objection.
I'll come to that in a moment, James, if I might.
That would be my comments on the 2 speakers.
Let me just take the first bit first. As is always my commentary, and I know the legal officer will support me, the report that we consider is the considered view of the planning department as expressed in the report of the head of planning, which is before us. My advice to any applicant that feels their application hasn't been dealt with appropriately or fairly, and I'm not getting into that tonight, and I will quash any debate on that tonight, is that there is an appropriate complaints process that you need to follow. The report we get is the final version, which is the one that has been seen and approved by planning management and comes out under the name of the head of planning. that is the report we consider. And I'm privy, the piece of paper that the head of planning has just read from, it's a 10-page document, and that first paragraph is exactly what he has just read you. So we have been certainly consistent there and consistent here. Obviously, I'm not privy to any of those conversations in the middle. So let's park that for a moment. Could we just look at, the petitioner raised the question of whether this does merit a third refusal reason around, principally around the grounds of, I think it's whether this can be beefed up, but also whether members feel there is something around this not being previously developed land. And I know this gets slightly technical, but let's just take that bit of the debate, and then I think we'll move along. James, what advice do you have for us?
I think we could strengthen refusal reason number one. I'd want to spend a little time working on the exact wording, so it would be the sort of thing that this committee delegates to the chairman and Labour lead, rather than me slightly on the hoof amending the wording, if that's acceptable to the committee.
Do you feel so you're leaning towards at the moment you don't think a third refusal reason?
Well, refusal reason one is basically any in principle refusal reason, and we can definitely, I think, reflecting on what Mr. Pigeon said, definitely strengthen that, but I'm not sure we need to have lots of different refusal reasons.
Could I make a suggestion then? I take that, and I think committee would probably agree that if this can be strengthened, it's never bad. But could we ask just that, because there was a very eloquent point made about previous development and the backland element and so forth, can I just ask that is looked at in conjunction with this, and if we can't get it into one cleanly, because that is about the principle of flatted development on this site, whether it does justify a third reason. Now, those will both have to come back outside committee, but if I could I'll get committee's agreement to that in a moment, but if you're happy with that, James, as a way forward. Yeah?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Right, Councillor Higgins, Councillor Flynn.
Two questions, really. Well, one question, and then I will say something. Have we got any information what's happening to the rest of the land? I know I saw that the planning application was...
No, but there is an informative in the addendum.
Yeah.
Apart from that, I don't believe we have, do we? Or do we, Andy?
To the best of our knowledge, it definitely is not part of this planning application development proposal.
Right.
However, in order for us to secure adequate maintenance of it, we are proposing that if it were approved, it would be done by condition. We wouldn't allow vehicular access from Signet Close to subdivide it, but we're not sure of the applicant's intention.
Okay, so we wouldn't put that condition in now, then? We'd have to wait till afterwards.
No, it's because it's a
refusal.
We did think whether there was any form of additional refusal reason, but we felt that ultimately it was an informative issue.
Okay, that's fine. I'll go with Officer's Risk and the slightly amended...
Councillor Flynn did also indicate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The significant issue here for me, I think, can be summed up in one word, and that's intensification. We saw the slides, and these are two rather sad-looking detached properties, and what is being proposed here is a pretty drastic change, obviously, to have 9 different units, which I think is just, we know it breaches the 10% rule, and I think it's just too drastic for a site such as this with overlooking other properties. So, for that reason, I will happily second Councillor Higgins and support Officer's recommendation on this.
Okay, does anybody have anything else to add on this one? Okay, so the proposal before us is that we second the Officer recommendation with a delegation to myself and the Labour lead to review the Head of Planning's strengthening of refusal reason 1 and or does it justify refusal reason 3. And we'll take his recommendation on that when he comes back. I think it's right he doesn't try and do it now. We get the wording right in with some cold evaluation. So all those in favour of refusal, please clearly show. That one's refused. Thank you very much. Right, I now move to land to the rear of Robins Herne and Littlewood, Ducks Hill Road, Northwood, in the same part of town again. Item 7, page 33.
Who's...
Thank you, Chair.
It's...
I'll be presenting this one. Agenda item 7 relates to land to the rear of Robins Herne and Littlewood Ducks Hill Road in Northwood. The application seeks outline planning permission for access and layout only for the erection of four detached houses involving the rear garden to the properties on Ducks Hill Road, which include Robins Herne here, and unfortunately this plan hasn't been updated, but there is a new development called the Woodlands, which stretches across this section of the site here. I might just go through the plans before I go through the application, the details. So the application is proposing to have a new vehicular access provided via, I'm going to get this road wrong, Fringewood Close. So it's just here. It's a dead-end cul-de-sac at the moment. It does have the turning circle as existing, but they're proposing to introduce an extension to the Fringewood Close road. The 4 plots would be located around that extended road with, well, accesses via this location, and then layout is the only other issue being considered here. So the layout of these 4 units have been shown on this plan. Let me try and see if I can find... So this plan shows more clearly that this is Robins Herne and Littlewood. Now, so this is the new development, which is referred to as Woodlands and is referenced in the Planning Committee report a fair amount, and is relevant because of its relationship to plot number 4, which is located in this corner. So these are they're not for approval, but they're indicative floor plans for the proposed plot. So that was plot 1, this is plot 2. The illustrative plans and elevations for plot 3 and 4 are here. So they're fairly traditional looking homes. This is the arboricultural report. There aren't really any significant arboricultural concerns raised because they are proposing to retain some of the more significant trees, and that's highlighted in the report. The application has been with us before, not this one, another, a very similar scheme. It was actually an application that we brought to you, or officers brought to you with a recommendation for approval. Members chose to overturn the recommendation. The applicants lodged an appeal, and it was actually upheld by the planning inspectorate that this scheme here, was unacceptable. Now, a lot of the report does actually cite some of the inspector's concerns, and concerns were raised with regard to overdevelopment, intensity, and so on. So the application is before you again with the same reasons for refusal in principle. I'll just show you some of the images of the site. So that's the site, and it's extensively got lots of trees. This is the actual cul-de-sac. So that was the turning head that you saw in the plans, and so you can see some of the trees in the background. They're substantial properties in the close, but as would the proposed units be. This is the front of Robins Herne on Ducks Hill Road. Sorry, I'm getting the roads all mixed up, even though they're in the same area. So this is the property, and it's the garden of this development. This shows the new Woodlands development that we were referring to earlier. This property here has also been redeveloped and subdivided. 10% rule doesn't apply in this location because the property is relating to the close as opposed to Ducks Hill Road. So for information, because it's quite difficult to see, we've tried to do an aerial which shows that this is the site at the back of all of those properties. Simply because you can't get many photos of the actual application site, it's someone's garden. If I just go through, so the scheme is a resubmission of a very similar outline application for 4 houses, for which an appeal was dismissed on 20th of February 2017. The current proposal is an almost identical scheme, and the changes made and clarification provided by the applicants are not considered to address the member's previous reason for refusal or the inspector's justification for dismissing the appeal. As such, the application is recommended for refusal, and the reason is stated is exactly the same as the last one. If we go through it, the proposed development by reason of its siting and layout would result in a development of the site which would fail to harmonise the existing local character and context of the surrounding area. The principle of intensifying the residential use to the level proposed, as well as the proposed loss of existing private rear garden, would be detrimental to the character and appearance of the area. I welcome any questions.
Yeah, James, yeah.
If I can just add a bit to what Mandiva said. So what members did when they originally determined this is it was noted that the planning history related to lapsed planning applications. So they there wasn't a situation of extant planning permissions that were underpinning for 4 proposed dwellings. So members decided that and members were advised that they were entitled to do this to effectively look at the scheme afresh. Now, what's happened is the planning inspectors upheld that refusal reason, and in our view, you have to put significant weight on that planning inspector's appeal decision. And I feel the applicant's still clinging to some of the old planning history, and effectively what we're saying in the officer's report is we don't feel they've done enough to address the inspector's concerns. So we're effectively putting considerable weighting on the inspector's appeal decision, and that's the advice I'll give you as a planning committee in terms of how to approach this application.
Thank you for that. There is the petition on this one. Mr. Shelton? Yep.
I'll try and be brief because my voice may not last too long. But, ladies and gentlemen, I'm speaking or attempting to speak for the 28 Fringewood Close petitioners who object to this application, who objected to the previous one as well. But in formulating these remarks, I've also consulted with the representative of the 17 objectors residing in the Woodlands apartment block, which wasn't occupied when we did our last petition. All of these 45 objectors ask you to follow the recommendation in the officer's report this time and reject the application. As the report makes clear, it's essentially the same application as you rejected unanimously in June last year and by the planning inspector early this year. And your committee rejected the principle of a 4-house development on this site. I won't go into all the reasons, they're all in the report and the previous decisions. And the Fringewood Close residents greatly appreciated the approach that your committee took last year, and I'd like to take the opportunity to thank you all for that. As is patently clear, the changes to the previous application are insignificant. They do nothing to address the inappropriateness of a 4-house development with houses on both sides of the proposed extension of Fringewood Close. And with regard to the Woodlands, when the previous version of this application was rejected by your committee, no account was taken of the impact of the construction of Woodlands. I'm not sure it was there when the consultation period was actually going on, and the residents only moved in after the consultation period had closed. And that's added a new dimension which simply reinforces the view that you and the planning inspector have taken, that the construction of houses on the north side of Fringewood Close is inappropriate. So for all the reasons advanced in the Fringewood Close petition and in the Woodlands residents' objections, we again ask you to follow the officer's recommendation to reject. Just a couple of points. The first one is we don't necessarily agree with some of the reasoning in the officer's report concerning some of the residents' objections which are outlined in that report, which the report suggests might, if you'd approved the application, have been dealt with by planning conditions. If the applicant submits a substantially revised application in the future for fewer houses with a different configuration, then we'll obviously re-examine and, if necessary, reiterate those objections in more detail. Secondly, now that the applicant's made 2 essentially identical 4-house applications, and on the assumption that you again reject the application today and that any further appeal is also dismissed, if any more 4-house applications for this site are made, we'd ask you to consider exercising the discretion that we understand the council has not to entertain any similar applications for the next 2 years following rejection of the application. But if you feel unable to exercise that discretion, when an application comes in, then be assured that the Fringewood and Woodlands residents will present as many petitions as it takes to ensure that further applications come before your committee so that we have the pleasure of discussing this all over again. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Do members have any questions? No. No, thank you. Is there anyone here on behalf of the agent or the applicant who wishes to speak? No hands go up. No ward councillors. I open it for debate. Obviously, the issue as to whether any future applications are not considered, it will be one for the head of planning and the legal advisors as and when they come in to determine whether they are. It is too much and they're too similar. So we can't do that one for you tonight. Right, I'll go Councillor Morgan, Councillor Higgins this time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Same as before, really. It's sad that yet again we're seeing a proposal that has a little change on the previous one. I fully support the officer's recommendations.
That's good, Councillor Higgins.
I'll second that, but I just do have a question. Is that true that, just as legal advice, this is that if the applications, we do have the right to do that, exercise that?
There is discretion under the legislation, Town and Country Planning Act, that if similar applications come in, and as Chairman has highlighted, we would need to compare the two applications. There is the ability for the council to refuse that permission because it's so similar, it's been determined, especially when it's been dealt with at appeal. But that's discretionary and we would have to consider it on its own merits should an application come in.
Okay, fine, thank you very much. But I'll second the second.
Okay, Councillor Oswald indicated before I take the vote on this one.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Sorry, through you, did you just second that?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you, that's it.
Oh, thank you very much. We have proposal due second. This is refused as per the officer report. All those in favour of refusal, please clearly show. Thank you. That one is refused. Right. I move on. Item 8, 7 Hedgewood Road, Northwood, page 49.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Item 8 on the planning agenda is number 7, Hedgeside Road. This is a part 2-storey, part single-storey rear extension, conversion of the roof space to habitable use, porch to the front, part conversion of the garage and alterations to the front and rear landscaping. I'll just take you through the plans, which are extremely helpful. So it's located on the western side of Hedgeside Road, and if you go down, I think it's Kew Ferry, you'll come to the bottom of the exit near Mount Vernon Hospital, I think. There you go. So all the way down Kew Ferry, and you come out about here. Just for context, because it's quite far down the road. This is the application site, so outlined in red just here. So to provide some context, this is the neighbouring property. It's quite difficult to tell from these plans, but there are significant changes in levels. So as you come from this part of the road and go up, the land rises. So this is set, so this annotation here states lower level, this states middle level, and this states high level. So the applicants clearly acknowledge that there is a significant change in levels as you move along Hedgeside Road. So the application is proposing the predominant changes along the boundary here. So it's this garage at ground floor level that is being, this garage at ground floor level, which is being proposed to be squared off at double storey level here, and then there's also single storey extensions at ground floor level here. So this is the single storey element, and that's a useful plan showing the existing and the proposed ground floor. The existing and the proposed first floor plans show the extent of alterations which are proposed at first floor levels just here, so just there. And this is the extent of the ground floor single storey rear extension. This is the proposed roof plan, so you can clearly see the additional rooms in the roof space and the proposed roof. One of the things that isn't very difficult, isn't very easy to see, is that this is proposed as a as a balcony on the ground floor rear extension. It seems strange that it would be provided where you've got two roof lights, but I guess you still need the illumination down to the ground floor. But this inner line here shows some balustrading for that balcony. It's more clearly shown here on the proposed rear elevation. So on the existing rear elevation there are two smaller dormers. They are being replaced with two larger dormers and also full height floor to ceiling doors which lead out onto this balcony. So this balcony has lower level balustrading here and then higher level balustrading which goes up to there to provide some level of screening to the neighbouring property. So this shows the changes. So this is the existing rear elevation and this is the proposed. And again, the existing front elevation and the changes are predominantly here, where the garage is being extended above and the roof form, the cap slide roof that exists here is being changed to a more standard design. One of the things that's a little more difficult to tell is that this is the new front porch that's being proposed. So this is the existing and this is the proposed. There are also roof lights proposed in the proposal, and that's obviously to provide some levels of illumination to the upper floor, second floor. This is extremely useful in showing the impact that the changes are having. So the elevations are changing quite significantly in terms of their widths and depths, and here you can see the addition of the balustrading that we were talking about in terms of the addition of a new balcony at first floor level. This is the front and rear garden. Again, you can see, so I mentioned the change in levels. There are actually steps that go up to the front garden because of the change in levels. And that doesn't really show the site level. Some of the photographs might be more useful. So you can see the application site. This is set at a slightly higher level, but there's a clear difference as you move. So we're now moving down Hedgeside Road, and that's a lower level there. So this is the relationship between the application site and the neighbouring property, and again the steps that are required to lead up to the ground floor. So this is the relationship, which is quite close. This is the rear elevation of the existing property, and the relationship just there. And the existing rear garden, again there are steps that go up because of the change in levels. I won't labour that point too much. The application seeks planning permission for a single storey rear extension, part 2 storey, the part single storey side, and the conversion of the roof space. It is actually recommended for refusal. Apologies. In principle, there's a significant close proximity for the proposed extensions and to the boundary and the depth of the projection beyond the rear neighbouring property. The proposed extension would result in a loss of light and have an overbearing impact on the occupiers of number 9, which was to the right if you're looking at the property face on. As such, the application has been proposed to be refused for 2 reasons. The first principally relates to its sheer size, scale and bulk, and the second relates to the 2 habitable rooms which will be provided in the roof space and therefore have no outlook or natural light or ventilation. I'd welcome any questions from committee members. Thank you.
Okay. Petition on this one, Christine Turnbull. If you press the button, that's it, lovely, and we'll start the timer as you begin to talk.
Yeah. Good evening, Chairman, councillors, ladies and gentlemen. I am speaking in objection to the planning application relating to 7 Hedgeside Road. My name is Christine Turnbull, and I am speaking on behalf of the lead petitioner, Mrs. Rashmi Kasamganji, who lives next door at 9 Hedgeside Road, and those neighbours who also signed the petition. We consider that this proposal to redevelop a 4-bedroomed house into an 8-bedroomed one is contrary to policy in Hillingdon's local plan, as well as rules laid out in HDAS residential extensions. This is the second application. The first was recommended for refusal and withdrawn the day of the North Planning Committee hearing. Those who have written and those who have signed this petition are grateful that the planning officer has again recommended this application be refused. We agree that the proposals would be detrimental to the amenities of Mrs. Kasamganji at 9 Hedgeside Road, as they would result in over-dominance, overshadowing, visual intrusion, loss of light and loss of outlook. As you know from the plans presented, 9 Hedgeside Road is north of the application site, in addition to being slightly set forward and higher. The planning officer has calculated that the rear extensions of the proposals would in total project 5.6 beyond the rear of 9 Hedgeside Road, the result being a failure to comply with BE20, BE21 and HDAS by way of loss of light and an overbearing impact. We also agree that the proposals would result in the provision of 2 habitable rooms with no outlook, natural light or ventilation to the detriment of the current and future occupiers, which is also contrary to BE 19, 20, 21 and HDAS. We believe this is a result of overdevelopment of the application site by way of the rear and side extensions, which in turn affect 9 Hedgeside Road. We note that the proposals also include a balcony on top of a single-story side extension, accessible from bedrooms 2 and 3, which we feel would overlook the private amenity of 9 Hedgeside Road. HDAS clearly states that no access to a flat roof should be provided so as to create the potential for use as a balcony. It goes on to state, the use of a flat roof as a balcony may cause significant overlooking to adjacent properties, resulting in loss of privacy. This would be considered unacceptable, and a condition will normally be attached to any planning permission for a single-storey rear extension, preventing the use of a flat roof as a balcony. We are also concerned not only about the increased number of cars an 8-bedroomed house will generate, but also by the increased amount of hard standing to front of the proposal, as water running off the existing driveway has already flooded the houses opposite. Finally, we note that there has been pre-application advice given, but the council makes it very clear that the views expressed cannot be taken to prejudice the formal decision of the council in respect of any subsequent planning application which would be subject to consultation. So, in conclusion, we respectfully ask the North Planning Committee to uphold the Planning Officer's recommendation for refusal on the grounds of size and bulk, and also those detailed in the report, and to also include the balcony in the grounds for refusal. Thank you.
Do members have any questions? No? Thank you very much. Thank you. Is anyone here on behalf of the agent or the applicant? No one admitting. And no ward councillors. Before I open it for debate, I'm going to ask the planning team whether there is additional comment required, because we do normally not like balconies that open out onto flat roofs. It's normally a no-no. Yes, thank you for that one. I was trying to think of an appropriate neat form of words, but I'll go with no-no. James, Mandy, one of you help me.
I think if you turn to the plan on page 149 of your plan pack, it does show that number 5 is at a lower level and is also at a slight angle and also set much further back than number 7, and they are providing a 2-metre screen along that boundary. So if this were proposed as a 2-metre, I'm not suggesting that it will be, as a double-storey extension, the concerns would be there, but they would be limited because you're matching the rear elevation building lines and I think that's principally the reason why it's not added as a reason for refusal. I do appreciate the concerns that neighbours have, though, about overlooking, but there are balustrades of 2 metres along the side, and then also some to the front. Other ways of dealing with that, if it were an approval, would be to prevent or to shift the balustrades back to prevent overlooking into the garden. So it's not something I'd recommend as a reason for refusal.
This one for debate. I've just got the head of planning looking at it as well at the moment. Oh God, I've got hands all over the place. I'll go Councillor Flynn, Councillor Higgins. Hang on. It's all right, no. And then Councillor Oswald, in that order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think what sort of kills this for me is the fact that you've got two habitable rooms with no sunlight, no outlook, almost like, you know, pretty depressing rooms really, and I don't think that's a situation that we should be looking to encourage as an authority. So I think as a refusal reason, that's quite a strong one as far as I can see.
Councillor Higgins.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a couple of things actually. The new version looks at a miniature version of this fine building here, which is it's a bit disturbing.
No comment.
Yeah. There doesn't seem to be anything in here regarding flooding. Obviously, the petitioner did mention that the hard standing would run off. I know it's not. It's sort of one of those things.
Of course, if it was recommended for refusal, such condition would appear.
And the other thing I did want to say is actually proposing to this to go forward is that the roof line of the existing property, we can't make sure that's kept because obviously that angle is there designed really to get that view through the buildings and draw light to the street. But I don't know whether that again is something that we can look at. Okay, and I'll go with officer's recommendation and propose this.
Councillor Oswald, I'll come to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. Yeah, Councillor Flynn's covered the point that I was also concerned with no natural light and no outlook. I'm quite happy to move the officer's recommendation, Chairman.
Indeed, I've got that bit. I'm just waiting. The head of planning is just having a quick think as to whether there is anything else we can.
I think what I'd say overall is we've got the 2 strong refusal reasons. I think I'd take on board that there are sort of other issues such as section overlooking and impact on visual amenity, but I think they'd both be quite weak refusal reasons. My recommendation would just be to stick with the ones we've got following Mandy's comment and looking at the plans and photographs.
Coming back, I mean, Julienne balconies are we allowed, don't we? We don't. That's anything. Juliet. Sorry, Juliet. Romeo would have felt that. Yes. And also the petitioner, if she does need a job as planning, we have planning applications. It'd be quite good. She's quite knowledgeable, I think.
Thank you, Councillor Higgins. Well, straying slightly beyond your brief.
I mean, so in terms of the overlooking issue, you've got the obscure glass screen on one side, and then the balcony's right over the other. It's some distance away from the other side of the property, and there's an existing first floor rear window much closer to the neighbours. So I think we'd be struggling a bit on that one.
Okay, we have 2 reasons. We've explored the other arguments. It is proposed and seconded. This is up for refusal. All those in favour of refusal, please clearly show. That was unanimously refused. Right. I get to item 9, 1 Manor House Drive, Northwood, on page 59.
Thank you, Chair. Agenda item 9 is number 1 Manor House Drive. Just for clarification or to understand where we are, this is Ducks Hill Road. Number 1 Manor House Drive is here, and Manor House Drive continues round to the back of these properties. The application seeks to provide 6 2-bedroom flats within a new build development within the application site, with associated amenity space, parking, and this all, again, involves the demolition of the existing building. The application is recommended for refusal for 3 reasons. The first being by virtue of size, scale and bulk, the development represents a visually unsympathetic form of development. Secondly, the internal floor space of one of the units, flat 6, does not meet planning standards. The third reason relates to the communal amenity area, the use of which leads to unacceptable levels of overlooking noise and disturbance. That's principally due to the arrangement of these properties and the, I'm not going to call it background development, but I guess it at some point it was. I'm just going to take you through the slides. So again, Ducks Hill Road. Sorry, the clicker's not our friend today. So along Ducks Hill Road, there is an existing vehicular access which is being retained, and used to provide vehicular access to 6 parking bays within the front garden. That would be the refuse store. This is number 70, Ducks Hill Road, and number 76. Obviously, the impact on number 76 is less, simply because Manor House Drive runs between the two. There is cycle parking proposed within what would be the communal amenity space to the rear. The new building is sufficiently wide. Now, you may argue that based on this plan, it's as wide as this. However, if we take you to the existing ground floor plan, this is the width of the existing ground floor, and they do have slightly larger distances to boundaries. I have the exact measurements on the plan somewhere, but if you look at the first floor plan, the first floor is set in a considerable distance from the boundaries. If we take you to the proposed floor plans, it doesn't show the boundary outlines, but they are predominantly to the boundary at double-storey level. These are the proposed elevations, and you can obviously see the expanse along the flank elevations, one of which would be quite visually apparent because of the existence of it being a quarter site on Manor House Drive. This is the proposed cycle store in the rear garden, and this just shows the site within its context on Ducks Hill Road. To take you through some photographs, this is the front elevation of the existing property. You can see that the site slopes down ever so slightly, and that's what this image was trying to demonstrate, the change in levels along Ducks Hill Road. So the front elevation does have, the front of the site does have a ground floor extension along here, and again that was my comment about the ground floor extension, but the first floor stepping in quite significantly along Manor House Drive, whereas the proposals would be, I believe it's 0.9 or 0.7 metres from the boundary. I can check those distances. This is a close-up of the front elevation and the existing parking area, which would again be utilised for parking. This is the side elevation, so the flank elevation of Manor House Drive, and the view from within there. This is the rear of the application site, and you can see that the relationship here with the adjoining property is fairly close, but there is a significant gap at first floor level. Take you through. Now, I'm going to give you some measurements before I go into the presentation. Easier said than done. If you have any questions about measurements, I'll come back to the plans, but I have the distances set out. Okay, so one of the things we did mention, if we go back to the floor plan, is the relationship between the application site and the adjoining property at number 70, which is this premises here. I can take you back to the floor plan. At present, it's quite. The applicants have designed the scheme in order to prevent a breach of 45 degrees with number 75, but the application site will stretch back, I believe it's 4.7 metres beyond the rear elevation of number 70 at double storey level. So I'd almost call this 2.5 stories because they are utilising the roof space. It's not a current reason for refusal, but it is something that, when we revisited this, would consider be upheld as a reason for refusal were members to consider it something that they wanted to look at. Again, we can go through, that's why I have noted down what the distances to boundaries are. So the gap between number 70 and the actual proposed development is only 2.2 metres. But again, the majority of that gap is an existing gap at number 70. The application proposal is not giving that much distance between the application site boundary. Again, I believe it's 0.9 metres from this Manor House Drive and the actual flank elevation of the proposed development, again, which is considerably deeper. If you look at this dotted line, that's the existing rear elevation of the property, and it's extending out at 2.5 metres quite significantly into the garden. The application is recommended for refusal for a number of reasons that we have set out on page 59, and I welcome any questions that members may have.
James.
In preparing presentations for committee, it does sometimes come up the issue about whether there are additional refusal reasons on schemes where we have multiple refusal reasons. And the focus of mine and Mandate's attention this afternoon was this application, not any of the ones you've determined previously. And so what we've done is I've circulated a piece of paper with 2 additional refusal reasons that I'd like to add to the officer report. Mandate's gone in some detail into the issue on 70 Duxhill Road. So this is an issue you as a committee have looked at before on many occasions, that is it simply enough to comply with the 45-degree line, or if something is overwhelming because of its size, bulk and depth on a neighbour and thus impacts on their outlook, is that unacceptable? So in this case we think it would have an overbearing impact. So that's refusal reason 4. And then refusal reason 5, and I will read these out in a second in full, relates to impact on on-street parking. So what we've done on a number of sites is that we would apply a 1-to-1 parking ratio in urban and suburban areas, but where you get a more rural location with a lower PTAL, and we've done this on a number of occasions, like the drive in Ickenham and locations such as this which have a low PTAL, we've looked at a 1.5 spaces ratio. So this site, the 6 spaces would only give you a 1-to-1 ratio. We don't think that is sufficient given the size and scale of the development and the fact that there aren't any one-bed flats here. These are large flats, so we think that there would be parking stress. And the council's highway engineer has looked at the surrounding road network, and there is parking stress in this particular area. So those 2 factors combined mean that there's 2 additional refusal reasons. I'm conscious they're not in the plan pack, the reasons, so I'm actually going to read them out, Chairman, so there's no uncertainty, especially as we do have petitioners. So refusal reason number 4 I'm proposing to add would be the proposed development by virtue of its height, depth and proximity of the side boundary of the site with detriment to the amenities of the adjoining occupiers at 70 Duxhill Road by reason of overbearing impact, and therefore the proposals will be contrary to policy B21 and the council's HDAS residential extensions guidance and policy 7.6 of the London Plan. And then the 5th refusal reason is the proposed development is likely to result in on-street parking in an area subject to parking stress to the detriment of highway and pedestrian safety. Proposal is therefore contrary to the council's adopted policies, and that's AM7 and AM14, as well as policy 6.3 of the London Plan. So we've covered all the relevant policies there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, we petition on this one. Martin Coffey. If you press the button when you're ready. Thank you.
Chairman, councillors, my name is Martin Coffey, a resident of Manor House Drive. My house is immediately behind 1 Manor House Drive, and my front windows face onto the proposed development site. I am one of the 2 lead petitioners, the other being Veer Galaya, who lives next door to me and whose house also faces onto the proposed development. I am grateful for the opportunity to speak in support of the petition, which has been submitted on behalf of the residents of Manor House Drive, the road which immediately abuts the side and rear of the application site. The petition was signed by 32 residents comprising all the houses in our road, save 2, including 1 Manor House Drive itself. It asks this committee to refuse this application. We note from the officer's report that a number of other neighbouring residents and Northwood Residents Association have also objected. Our principal objections to this application can be summarised as follows. Overdevelopment of the site, which is not large and which currently comprises a single detached house and garden, including a loss within the site of much open space, the unacceptable loss of privacy to numbers 2, 3 and 4 Manor House Drive, resulting from the proposed fenestration, and finally the effect of the proposed flats on traffic movements and on the likely amount of on-street parking which it would generate along Manor House Drive. The proposed building would, by reason of its scale, width and proportions, and its architectural style, be massively out of keeping with the neighbouring houses. In short, it would be far too big for the plot. I note that the officer's report accepts this criticism of the scheme. Manor House Drive is, as a matter of information, a cul-de-sac containing 17 detached houses. Despite what the planning officer says in his report, we do not agree that the road is suitable for the erection of flats. The windows at the rear of the proposed building will look directly into the front windows of number 2, 3 and 4 Manor House Drive. As I understand, many of those windows at the upper levels will be of habitable rooms and not bedrooms as existing. As a result, privacy will be adversely affected. Given the nature of the public transport in our immediate area, it is likely that the occupiers of each of the proposed 6 flats will have at least one car. Given the limited on-site parking, it is inevitable that a number of those cars will be parked on the public highway. In addition, no on-site visitor parking is proposed, so visitors will also park their vehicles on Manor House Drive. Manor House Drive is unsuitable for more on-street parking. It is a quiet, narrow cul-de-sac which was never designed for that purpose, and which could not, in our opinion, properly accommodate extra vehicular traffic and on-street parking. We already suffer from lengthy periods of daytime street parking of trade vehicles connected to developments of properties along Ducks Hill Road, and nighttime parking by residents of some of the houses on Ducks Hill Road, often taking up virtually half the length of the road, and with vehicles often parked with their wheels on the grass verge or on the pavements. We do not agree with the Highways Department's opinion that increased traffic and street parking is unlikely to be significant, although we know the new Part 5 that's been added. Ducks Hill Road is thoroughly unsuitable for on-street parking, so all extra parking will in likelihood be on Manor House Drive. Chairman, that's all I wish to say. Thank you very much for your attention. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
Do members have any questions? No. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone here on behalf of the agent or the applicants?
Good evening. I'm the agent for this application. Obviously, I've prepared for the 3 reasons that are in the officer's report, so please bear with me as I'll try to deal with the other 2. The second and third reasons for refusal we can address quite efficiently. The second concerns the size of flat 6. If the second bedroom is reduced in size to say 10.5 square metres, it then actually becomes a 2-bedroom 3-person unit as opposed to a 2-bedroom 4-person unit, and it requires a much smaller net internal area. So it only requires 61 as opposed to the current standard of 70, and at 64 it's comfortably over. In terms of the third reason for refusal, my understanding was that concerning the ground floor flats of our scheme. We can demarcate a section of the garden to be used as private space. That therefore separates it from the communal space and protects the privacy of those ground floor flats. That's still leaving quite a large area of communal space. That leaves the first reason for refusal. Obviously, I'll then backtrack to the other 2. This, of course, is essentially a subjective judgment which members will make for themselves. There's a few points that I set out which I hope will assist. There's clearly a need for housing in Hillingdon. There is in all London authorities. It is previously developed land, and recognising issues with the PTAL, it's still a sustainable location. It's a residential area. So the 5 additional units, there are a valuable resource, and there's a lot of policy support for new housing. We know the scheme works practically in terms of highways. I'll probably introduce the parking issue here. Obviously, a new reason for refusal has been added. The officer's report had consulted with the highways team, and they would recognise there was a possibility of some visitor parking on the side road, which is unrestricted, but this is unlikely to be significant. Our understanding is that there is capacity there. I appreciate obviously the objectors may disagree. In terms of the subjective judgment, in terms of the built form, we've prepared 2 street scene perspectives which were submitted, and they're really the best source of information in order to assess the impacts of this scheme. There's a number of points I'd just like to draw members' attention to. The first is a clear and marked slope as we go down the street, and obviously that assists in assimilating us with our neighbours. There's a large gap afforded by Manor House Drive, which separates the scheme from number 76 Duckhill Road, so we're not jamming the development in. There's space along that side. And also in terms of the street scene, there's the development at number 68, which is 2 doors down and quite a sort of bulky development. So in terms of assessing that part of the street, those matters need to be taken into account. In terms of the overbearing impact on number 70, which is the new fourth reason for refusal, we have respected the 45-degree line. It's a balance between obviously affecting neighbours and producing good quality accommodation and providing homes for people. Because of that rule, we followed that. We feel that that's really determinative, and on that basis, we made my comments on that fourth reason. I think I've covered the fifth, and thank you very much.
Members have any questions? No. Thank you. There are no ward councillors, so we move to debate on a 3 refusal reason report, which the head of planning is recommending you add 2 more refusal reasons to, which becomes a 5. I'll open it for debate from there. Councillor Higgins.
I caught this nice and sweet, short and sweet growth officer's recommendation on this. I mean, this is taking a corner plot to a new level as far as I'm concerned. The bulk is just too much on this. And
would you be supporting the head of planning suggestion that
I would 100%. And
okay.
Got nothing to do with me.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, originally John did put his hand up and he wasn't saying, but not to worry, you missed him. May I just start off with saying thank you very much for the screen, long waited, but well done, thank you. Yes, after listening, of course, both sides, there is a lot there. You know, we got a parking stress, we got overdevelopment, we got loss of, space, loss of light. So, for a number of reasons, I will more than happy to second the recommendation. Thank you very much.
Anybody else got any comments on this one? No. So we have a proposal before us that this is refused for the now 5 reasons that have been given by planning. All those in favour of refusal, please clearly shout. That one's refused. Thank you. Right. I now move to item 10 and 11, and just for clarity, this is an application in respect of a listed building, so we have a planning application and listed building consent. They are not considered separately. There'll be one presentation by the planning officer covering the issues on the site, although there of course will need to be 2 votes.
Okay.
Away you go.
So item agenda 10 and 11 relates to the old shooting box. This is a Grade 2 listed building in the Eastcote, and it also sits within the Eastcote Conservation Area. The application, very simply, is for the relocation of the dangerous access into the site from the northern end of the site or southern end of the site to the eastern end of the site. So it's moving from here to in the middle there. Right. So there are minor alterations to the front garden. These have been considered both in terms of the planning application in the context of the listed building, and also in terms of the listed building application. The conservation area officer doesn't have any objections to the proposed works. They're sympathetic to the listed building. The proposed works are considered necessary because at the moment it's fairly dangerous. There's a very narrow footway there. This is the house. Here's the opening, and this is the wall that obstructs the views coming out. So the occupiers of this building, it's a hazard, and this is an application that's being supported by planning officers, highway officers, and the conservation officer. The recommendation is to approve both planning and listed building consent. I'm happy to take any questions.
I'll take the questions at the end. Okay, Leslie Crowcroft, the Chairman of the Eastcote Conservation Panel, has asked to speak on this one. I think you know the format, so I'll...
Good evening, Chairman and Committee, and thank you very much for allowing me to speak. The reason I have asked to address you this evening is to try and meet the concerns of the applicants, Mr. and Dr. Williamson. They were very much surprised that a councillor asked us to come to committee, so we thought we would, I asked if I could speak just to allay any concerns the committee may have. The reasons for the works are not for monetary gain, they're not for cosmetic reasons, and they're not just for fun. They are very serious reasons. The entry and egress into this onto the road here is very, very dangerous. I have walked round there many times. The road is narrow and people do drive very fast. Even though we have speed bumps everywhere, they still manage to drive fast. The second reason for safety of the family is the Williamsons have a very young son. He's 3 years old, and obviously they will feel much safer if they can have gates on the front of this building, of the grounds, to keep young Tom inside safely. The works around the house, which have caused concern to some of the neighbours, do not affect neighbouring properties at all. They are purely because the air vents, with people putting in extra layers of brickwork on piles, have blocked off the air vents, so the underneath of the house is becoming damp. In one place where the outside has been raised so far up, when it rains, the water runs through into the kitchen. So all of these works are purely for safety reasons and for protection of the building. The council's conservation officer has been on site 2 or 3 times. The applicants are very keen to do everything as she has asked them, and the design for the gates are in preparation at the moment, and I think it is conditioned, but they will be submitted to the council before they are put in. The highways officer has no concerns and agrees that the sight lines are very poor, and also the tree officer has no concerns for the trees apart from the standard protection of tree roots when the work is going ahead if necessary. So we just wanted to allay any concerns that you may have and ask that you approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you for that. If I may just make a comment, there is no evidence this is before us because anyone's pulled it in. Grade 2 listed buildings and their works almost always, if the head of planning has any doubt, he will almost always put them before us because of their sensitivity. There's no evidence in the report. I think we're raising issues that are not here at the minute.
They were told that it was, so this is why I'm here.
Debate I'm not doing. It's not in the report. The head of planning does have the right to pull these in under the scheme of delegation. So I'll leave it at that, if I may. Before we start on this one, it looks relatively straightforward. Given this is a grade 2 listed, condition 4, could we have a little look at? Because I know I think we would like that to be strengthened. Mamahan, from a highways perspective,
yeah,
please.
That's right, Chairman. The plans do not show the crossover or the dropped curb, so we need details of that, and restrict the width of the crossover to a minimum of 3.6 meters. What they've got on the plans is there's a metre wide pedestrian gate as well, and they're widened the crossover in front of the pedestrian gate as well.
Okay. If committee are acceptable, I will ask that the authority be granted, delegated authority to the head of planning, to look at that one. James?
Yeah.
Page 75. Condition 4, details of samples to be submitted.
Yeah, so what I think Mamhan is saying is not... yeah, I think he's actually referring to an extra planning condition rather than a...
Well, next one, or you want to change what you've got?
Condition 4.
I don't mind.
As I understood what Mamhan said, so it was a kind of a notwithstanding submitted plans, and then Mamhan would set out some particular highway requirements.
Do you want to do it that way?
So I think it's an extra condition rather than...
Okay, I'm
because
happy.
condition 4 is really something that's coming from our conservation team.
Okay.
So, yeah, I agree with his comments, but I think it needs a condition 6 rather than a change to condition 4.
The informative say you've been granted planning permission to build a residential extension. And I somehow don't think that that's the case. I think it's a typo, but it's good to get the odd typo out of these things. Yeah, I think it's copy and paste error. I think I'll ask for that to be corrected in a moment, and then I'll go. I don't know who was first. Who was first? Honesty on my side. Who was first? Councillor Flynn, I'll go with on the basis of that's first hand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Personally, I regard this as pretty common sense, really, for the reasons set out in the report and from what we've heard. So, I'm happy to go with the officer's recommendation. There's one typo that I think I may have noticed as well. I'm pretty sure this property actually lies within Northwood Hills Ward and not Eastcote Ward, but I don't think that's
I suspect that may well be the case.
That's not fundamental to
it's
the
not
application.
Fundamental, but I think your correction is noted and accurate.
But I am happy to support the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Graham, as you haven't had a...
Yes, I'll second it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I'm just checking with officers, that additional conditions, that needs to go on both reports?
No, it only needs to go on the planning.
Right, okay.
You don't have to duplicate.
Does anybody have any other views on this one? Right, so, the recommendation before us is that on item 10 we add a condition 6 to do with highway plans, and that to be delegated to the head of planning to agree the wording. We amend the informative, which has crept in erroneously, because we wouldn't like to think anyone's building anything. And apart from that, the application is for approval. All those in favour of approval, please clearly show. Thank you very much. Can I take the same 2 seconders for item 11, which is the listed building consent? And all those in favour of the listed building consent, please clearly show. Thank you. That is approved. Thank you very much. Can I now ask for the live feed to be switched off, please?